Great, thanks a lot, Dick. It's great to be here, and this has been such a great conference. We're actually kind of on a roll this afternoon. I think we've heard about how technology is being used to help the United States perform its national security mission. Then we just heard about authentication and about the way that that could possibly increase trust in terms of user trust and confidence in transactions on the net. And today we want to talk a little bit about social networking services and the effect of Gov 2.0 on the government and on the providers of those services from a security and risk standpoint. So government is finding social networking and Gov 2.0, as you know, very useful, very important. At the same time that it does create some risks, and so we want to talk a little bit about that. Our longer-term vision, of course, is that security is something that's baked in to the systems and networks and processes that we're using, but at the moment that's not the case. Right now it's bolted on, and so we have to find ways of dealing with that kind of a situation. So we're going to talk about risks to the government and kind of how we're thinking about, in a couple of cases, balancing those, and also risks to the providers of services to the government, and kind of talk a little bit about how it's a shared risk situation. As Dick said, we are going to start with Price Floyd, who is the head of public affairs for the Department of Defense. And one of the things, as you know, the Department of Defense is doing right now is a review of the use of social networking in the department and trying to balance some of these risks. Price?
Thank you. One thing I want to note, when I told folks I was coming to speak here and I might discuss the policy that's under review, right after I said that, I was on my BlackBerry, and all of a sudden it stopped working. And so I don't know if there's a connection between there. I say that half in jest, because I now believe anytime anything happens on my BlackBerry, that it's the people trying to shut down my ability to communicate. First of all, I've been on the job for about 9 weeks now, and my first day on the job, I met with Secretary Gates, and his charge to me was unusual because I'm the head of public affairs. And his charge to me was not so much about messaging and kind of communication strategies. What it was about was social media. He wanted to engage with people more, and note the use of the word engage, not communicate. And that's what he sees as the promise of social media, the ability for him to express himself or ask a question and hear a response in return, and then once again have him respond to the public or people from inside the Defense Department, which numbers about 2 million people. So I took that charge, and within a few weeks of that, realized they were trying to shut down all access from .mil, your government or DoD accounts, to social media. And so what we did is we've started a process, a policy review, that looks at both the security concerns that are real, but also the benefits that are also real with social media. And I wanted to share a few of those things with you, that policy review, some of the things we learned. We went out to both the industry, to people in the military, to people in the building, and even to family members of those who serve, and asked them what they thought about social media, the benefits of it, as well as the threat concerns. And we heard some interesting responses. I'll give you a couple. One was from family members of those serving overseas. They found the ability to communicate with their husbands, wives, sons, daughters, mothers, fathers invaluable, both for how they felt about the family, but also how their member who's serving overseas felt. Their morale was better because of their ability to communicate. And one specific story a family member told us was that her husband was able to do homework, help their kids with homework while serving overseas because of the social media and some of the sites that are out there. And I thought that story was amazing, that you could do your homework with your kids. I don't do mine, and I'm here in town with them, but that's for other reasons. Another thing that was interesting was it was actually mentioned, I knew about it before, but it was also mentioned in a New York Times story that ran a couple of days ago by James Dow, where he talked about General Caldwell, who is in Fort Riley. And right now, as we're meeting, they're updating their manuals as we speak. They're doing it online. They're using blogs and social networking technology to update their counterinsurgency manuals, lessons learned, and usually those things happen when folks rotate back from serving in conflict, and they do lessons learned or after-action reports when they're back. But now they're doing it in real time, and so it actually means it's a benefit for the men and women on the ground right now. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the new website that we have at the Defense Department. The old website was defenselink.gov, which made no sense. Even the name didn't make sense for the Defense Department. We changed the name, we relaunched it, and we put a couple of things on there, other than the usual Twitter and Facebook that you would expect, but a couple ways for people to interact with the Secretary. There's the normal one you would expect as well, to ask the Secretary a question. But the one that I thought was more interesting was, tell us your policy initiatives that are important to you. In other words, it's not communicating out, it's allowing people to communicate into the Defense Department, something that had never happened before. And finally, I want to close with talking about the policy review itself. It's still ongoing. I can't make an announcement of for sure of where it's going to end, but my guess is where it'll end is with a well-balanced policy, one that acknowledges the benefits of social media as well as the risks. And on one risk I do want to discuss, which is what we call OPSEC at the Defense Department, operational security, and why it's still important. Some people think, some of the people who were speaking before talked about anonymity and people out there, and sometimes people feel more secure when they're twittering than they actually would amongst their own friends and saying things, which I find ironic. In the past, when you sent a letter home when you were serving overseas in battle, if you broke operational security, talked about an ongoing operation, at most 1 or 2 people would hear about it. Now, if you update your Twitter site and you break operational security, thousands of people hear about it immediately. And they could Twitter it to other people and thousands more. So the risks are great. We need to do more education, more training of our troops. I want to keep my remarks short because I want to take questions and answers if there's time. And for those who want to follow my Twitters, God help you, but you're welcome to. But it's on the DoD website. On the top left, it says Twitter. If you click on it, you'll get my feeds or my Twitters. And sometimes I put in the workouts I've done that day with some of the people in the Pentagon. You should try some of them. They're quite intense. So anyway, with that, I want to turn it over back to Bruce.
Thanks so much, Price. Okay, so we're going to sort of follow this down a little bit and pull back the zoom a little bit to talk about some of the larger risks that some of this reliance on Gov 2.0 can have for government. And to do that, Rick Wesson is here. He's the CEO of Support Intelligence that infiltrates botnet networks to enable his clients to protect against them.
Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about something that I feel very passionately about, which is the security of the network in general. A lot of the activities that I've been participating in, I wanted to tell you about a couple of the kinds of things that are going out on the internet that you may not have heard about. There's a large number of groups that are trying to infiltrate your computer systems. Certainly the Department of Defense knows about them. But they go for all kinds of organizations and individuals. And as we integrate new capabilities for government onto the web, it provides a new avenue for our adversaries to connect to these systems under someone else's identity, or to leverage some information that they might glean from having access to one of these resources, as well as it reduces the capability of the state to be able to ensure that the privacy of their citizens and security of their citizens. A few years ago, there was an attack against a small country in Europe, in Estonia. And those attacks that attacked various aspects of a highly integrated society to the net eroded the soft power of the state. It removed their ability to communicate. It removed their ability to interact with their citizens, for the citizens to do banking transactions. And today, we have groups that are very interested in penetrating large numbers of organizations and have penetrated them in all countries, not just the United States. And so my concern is that we take a step in our analysis when we're bringing something new that's going to support government or potentially emergency services, that those systems have the capabilities of withstanding these kinds of attacks, whether they're from a denial of service attack or they're from the ability to steal a credential and obtain some information, such as banking. A very real activity that's happening today is small businesses, medium-sized businesses, businesses with 500 employees are getting $100,000 stolen out of their accounts. This goes on today, and we can't stop it. And we can only have that go on for so long before we start losing jobs from that sector, because these groups are exfiltrating dollars out of the United States to parties that we may not be very friendly with. So when you're thinking about bringing a new service that integrates society in some way, think about the implications if that service or new capability is attacked or leveraged by even a non-state actor for some other reason. Just yesterday, while I was sitting here, I was watching an attack on Australia that was being promulgated by a group that was unhappy with some legislation that had just passed. And fortunately, they were not able to amass very many people to participate in the attack. There was enough that we could actually detect that they were doing it. We could sit there and have conversations with the people that were doing it, all from this room, over our little wireless network. So the internet is fantastically growing over the world, and as we integrate our lives into it, we can become vulnerable. And all I ask is that when you're thinking about new services, you're thinking about integrating the network into society, that we look at some of the capabilities that bad actors can have on that collection of the group or the identities. Thank you.
Great. So as you can see, there are risks all around here. Speaking from the perspective of Department of Homeland Security, our job within this overall context of the government's work on cybersecurity is to lead the work both for the civilian agencies of government, the so-called .gov domain, and in addition to lead the work to the extent there is work for the federal government to do in the .com domain. And so as part of that, we're experimenting as a department with various aspects of social networking, and so we're not as far out in front of this as the Defense Department is, but we now have a YouTube channel, and although we can't actually get to it from our own desktops, and in addition, we're starting to look at some of the other things, and in this context, we've started to realize that as we sign up for some of these social network services, there's a number of risks which we face. We could be led, or our users, people in the department could be led to download malware from bad sites. So there's all sorts of kind of standard risks that come from just connecting to the internet in various ways. And as Price suggested, a big piece of that is a training issue and from the standpoint of our employees. But in the conversations with one of the social networking companies, we got into a different area of risk, which is that, maybe doing work with the Department of Homeland Security creates an exposure for the company in the sense that, they could be subjected, like Twitter was the other day, to a denial of service attack that would have an effect on some of their regular users, as just because of the fact that they, something was happening on our piece of the social network that was offensive to someone who had access or had hired a botnet to use attacks. So what we realized from that conversation is that a couple of things. First of all, many of the social networking sites, especially the smaller ones, are really consumer-grade products or services, not industrial grade, and so they're not in a position, small companies necessarily, to make the investments needed to really have a high reliability, highly defended service. In addition, we also realized, as Rick was saying, that as we become more dependent on it and start to use these technologies and services to really improve the way we serve the public by collecting comments, for example, from air travelers on the activities and procedures that are done as you enter the airport, or by working on Southwest issues related to immigration and the border, that it becomes an integral part of our ability to perform our mission and to serve the American people, then we become dependent on it, and so we have a shared risk and stake in the fact that these services need to stay up and running and not be taken down. And I think that piece of it is where the conversation is starting to go is, okay, how do we both parties look at this, manage these risks, because these are not risks that you can eliminate, even with an infinite amount of money, and none of us have that. So they're really it's really about managing the risks and accepting the risks, understanding them, and using techniques to mitigate them through training and through backups and through not necessarily authorizing everybody to from inside the department to download material from the various sites and that kind of thing. So it's really an ongoing process, and we're working with some of the other agencies in the department across the government to come up with an overall approach to this. So with that, we have about a minute and a half here, so we can take a question or two, I reckon. Do we have any? We are the last thing between you and the break, so security problems are solved.
So how many people out here Twitter? There's a couple. Do y'all Twitter more on personal or professional or a combination or professional? All professional? I find if I put Twitter on professional, no one would, it's kind of boring, the Defense Department, some stuff. So I try to put some personal, not that my personal stuff is exciting, but, or it shouldn't be.
That's right. Great. Anything else? Let's see. Have one, all right.
Yeah, my name is Raza Latif. About the question of using social media tools within the government, the conversation has revolved around either controlling it or reducing it, stopping it, or allowing it. What is the middle ground? Is there any possibility of a governance structure that could be built that could consist of some kind of tools, processes, training, policy that sort of goes in and protects against the risks that we just talked about?
So I'll take a couple on that. One is we are using them internally to the government. So, for example, you may have heard already, in fact, today about Intellipedia, which is an internal wiki to the intelligence community and provides the ability of people to share information, and it's built on the same platform as Wikipedia is built on, and so that's one approach. Another approach is to do it sort of carefully. And that is to be careful about who you authorize to do it, but use the commercial services out there, because, let's face it, the commercial services are much faster evolving and so and easier to use. So I think our general tendency is going to be to use commercial services as much as possible, and then maybe in some special applications to use something that we hybridize or build ourselves. Any comments on that?
I do. I was talking about this with someone before I came, and we're talking about how long did we think it would take the government to create Twitter, and how much would it cost? And we figured by 2025 we could have developed it, because just the request for proposal, an RFP, we acronym everything. Just the RFP process would take years, and then we'd get the proposal, and we'd have to analyze them. We wouldn't know what we were analyzing, but we'd analyze them. And that has to take at least 9 months, because if you do it quicker, then you don't know what you're doing. So you have to take a long time. So my fear is that government involvement in this stuff, it just won't work. The internal stuff we do is good, and we need to continue doing that. But our ability to communicate with the public, to be a government that's transparent, that engages. The promise of social media and the benefit is amazing for a country like America. And in fact, it's amazing in a bad way for a government like Iran. And Twitter and what happened there is a perfect example. You cannot stop this. This is the people speaking. And even if we did shut down Twitter or whatever it was, there'd be another way to do it. If they didn't allow access from .mil, your government accounts, to these sites, they'd go underground. The people go underground and find ways to communicate. This is how people communicate today. There'll be a different way they communicate in a year or more from now. So I don't think we should fear this. I think we should embrace it and in fact, run with it.
Well, great. That was perfect. What a great way to end the panel. Thank you so much for your time.